Hello, this is Paul Chek. Welcome back to my video blog. Today we continue our little mini-series on the change process. My last video blog was part 1 of the series, and I looked at the first 3 stages of change of the 5 that I attributed to the change process as commonly used. They were pre-contemplation, contemplation, and preparation. Today we go to the 4th of the 5 stages, which is action, baby, action, taking action. So I've got 10 little key points I'd like to share with you today, which I will do as efficiently as possible. To begin with, our steps start with making peace with where you are now. Many of you are already quite aware that the change process can be bumpy, and it can have its aches and pains. There's certainly times when changing is joyous, but change is something that's often challenging for us because of the way our nervous systems actually work. Whenever we repeat any process, for example, if you have a given behavior, our neural net begins to modify itself so that energy flows through the neurons that basically enliven, excite, and recall those behaviors. And each time we do it, the resistance to the flow of energy gets smaller and smaller. So just think of pouring water on the side of a hill. It finds the easiest path down. Well, each behavior begins to find the easiest path of expression through the nervous system. So then after a period of time, if you come along and all of a sudden you want to introduce a new behavior, it can be very hard because even though you know you want the new behavior, something inside of you keeps wanting to go back to the old ways. And this is the origin of the saying, you can't teach an old dog a new trick. The old dog has a very well-established neural network. So in order to get energy to flow through the neural network in the direction of the new behavior, you have to do the work to re-establish the new neural network to the point that it is as efficient as the old neural network, and even at that point you still have to stay focused in the action stage, because here it requires conscious competency to be aware of what you need to do in order to continue to facilitate the new neural pathway so that it's easier to perform the new behavior than the old behavior. But that does take time and commitment, and I'm going to share some things hopefully that will help you. What we want to do is read Arnold Patton's Universal Principle number 9, because it's really, really important to the change process. And there's a couple of absolute diamonds hiding inside this principle, so I'm going to read it to you. Universal Principle number 9 says, "Do what you love to do and the universe will support you. For my life's work, I will do what I love to do. The universe supports us in all ways for doing what we love to do. Recognition of what we do not love to do initially alters our perception and then leads to the desire for change." And here's a very key statement that's really relevant to this whole action stage. In order to move to a more ideal place, we must first make peace with where we are now and allow it to be perfect in this present moment. The completion of one experience provides the power to begin another. So do what you love to do. Selecting a career, for example, because it seems like a safe, easier, quick way to make money, ensures a life of discomfort. When we are off purpose, the universe draws our attention to it by making things uncomfortable for us. When we're doing what we love to do, the universe shows its support in many ways. We feel more alive, things flow more smoothly, and we attract people and circumstances that support us. Oh, great spirit! These are great universal principles, by the way. You can go to arnoldpatent.com and print them off. I recommend reading them daily, at least one of them. Okay? So, the key point is we must make peace with where we're at now. Otherwise, we're always anchored in the past. If we keep driving with our eyes in the rearview mirror, he said, she said, woulda, coulda, didn't, then we naturally bump into unnecessary obstacles because we're not paying attention to the dream. We're too invested in the past. So I'll share some methods for helping you heal that. Next, as I reiterated, or as I iterated in the previous discussion, we have the ABCs of dream building. So C for clarity, B for belief, A for action. So what I'm saying here is that your ABCs are essential for your compass bearing or your motive. If you don't have clarity, you can't have vision. You can't know where you're going. If you don't have belief, well, you're in trouble. So what you see here is clarity gives us vision, but clarity equals desire. If you have a new dream or a new goal or objective, you obviously are stating that you have the desire. Being clear on that goal, dream, or objective is almost a reliable measure of one's desire. In other words, if you don't desire it enough to get clear and to believe and to take action, it's probably not really that significant or that worthy of a goal. It may be just an exercise that you're going through to please a teacher or somebody else in your life, but I doubt it's authentic. When you really have an authentic dream, goal, or objective, you do get the clarity to have the vision and adequate amount of desire to fuel your belief, which is your heart-mind connection, your conviction, and your commitment. When there's belief, there's linkage between the heart and the head. The idea is infused with life force or love, and that causes forward momentum. Action equals willpower. There's a direct relationship between one's desire and one's will. So just think of a jet engine. The harder it sucks or desires, the harder it blows and the faster you go. So the pilot's desire is regulated essentially by the throttle. The more desire he has to go faster, the more suction or desire there is and the more power there is. So your desire for change is directly related to your will for change. So if you're having a hard time changing, it might be really important to go back to your ABCs, because almost always a lack of desire coupled with a lack of will means some sort of disablement or a lack of participation here. 3, input and output versus input process output. Change is very hard for people worldwide today because most of them are raised in an academic environment, which was really, if you study a book called A Brief History of Everything by Ken Wilbury, shows that our academic system was actually developed by plantation owners and was specifically designed to get people to follow orders, not think for themselves, and to distinguish creativity, because creativity in places like factories is not a good thing where you have assembly lines and mass production. So what we have is we now have a society that is really built and educated on a business model, and the business model means that the employees do what they're told, don't think for themselves. So that process has also come with a concept that business models are based on a standard model, which is, if I put this much energy and money in to such and such a project, I will get this much energy or money in return. So someone wants to sell widgets. You go looking for money. You write up a plan. Someone invests $1 million in your widget factory. The paper that you have written up and the business plan suggest if you invest $1 million in my widget factory, I will be able to give you $1.2 million in a year, and I'll be able to give you $1 million such and such each successive year. So now on paper that looks real great. Good, here's some money. Go make some widgets and make me rich. But that plan fails disastrously, very, very common. In fact, where it fails most, in my experience, is the restaurant business. There's more failures in the restaurant business than anywhere. Why? Because though it looks good on paper, there's many things about the process that cannot be predetermined. They have to be experienced. So in order for us to make an effective transition in the change process, we have to be aware of the importance of understanding the change process. And as a guy who spent his whole life creating tons of stuff and still do every day, including this video right now, I can tell you the process is where most people get a kick in the ass if they're not clear on what the process really means. So if we look at the way most of us are conditioned to believe, oh, if I just do this, I'm going to get that, we have to realize something. The map is not always reliable relative to the territory. You can get lost with a GPS. People get lost coming out here all the time, even though their map suggests they know how to get there. But once they get into the territory, they have an interesting process and often get lost. That's exactly how the change process works. So what do we need? We need to look at the reality of an input process output model. Here, this line measures our perceived level of success. This represents time. I don't have any specific time markers or means of measuring for a simple reason. Most of those things get blown completely to pieces. That's why we have what's called the 2 times 3 times rule. It usually costs twice as much as you think it will and takes 3 times as long as you expect it to. Now remember, over here, people just think I'm going to put money in here and a bunch of money is going to jump out over here. But this model doesn't include this experience. It's just an assumption, okay? So what we see typically in the process is someone gets excited, they get support, finances, or whatever it might be, and they're in the planning stage, and the planning's going well, and they can see their widget, and they can imagine, you know, Deepak Chopra wearing one on Oprah and talking about it, and, you know, they get all excited and juices begin to flow. Well, then you get from the planning stage to the product development and testing stage. And this is where we often find out that our widget has some problems, or it needs fine-tuning, or it's pulling hair out of people's nose, or something that we never expected. Insurance liabilities and all sorts of stuff. One time I invented and patented a device for correcting the imbalances created in an athlete's legs by the act of distance running and related sports. And I was all excited. I had my first order for 4,000 units. And then when I went to go engage in the process and sign the contract, they said, oh, but we need a liability insurance contract due to the danger of wearing these devices on swimming pools and hard surfaces, because it was a device that was used in the pool. So then I got the big surprise of my life. I had to go investigate what liability insurance for that device would cost, and it was estimated at between $30,000 and $40,000 a year. Well, my God, I was probably only going to make $6,000 off my first order of units, and I thought, how in the world could I pay that much insurance? I may never sell that many of these. So it killed my project because I didn't have enough funding to pay the insurance and then fund the manufacture and the marketing and the development of the product any further. So there's a classic real live example from a bona fide inventor with patents lining the wall. These are things that you got to be ready for. Most people don't have the balls to go through the change process because they want everything to be peaches and cream. They think they're just going to divorce their wife and find a new girlfriend, and that their wife's just going to disappear and blow away like a leaf. Hey, get ready for the ride, baby. Okay? So here we see what was all happy and joy and everything was on flow, but remember, this part here deals with theory. That part there, it deals with a thing called reality. And there's an old saying, reality bites. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it also nibbles and kisses. So if you make it through the stage where you're going through all these trials and errors and you find out you need liability insurance that's very, very expensive or something like that, you get to the point in a process where you've worked things out and now things begin to gel and flow. And this part right here is radically important because it's the challenge process that often inspires you to look deeper into things and to develop new and meaningful relationships that teach you how to be more efficient in the change process and in the creative process, which leads you to learning how to grow, fulfill yourself more efficiently, and be a great example to other people. I couldn't be useful to you if I hadn't been through this little rodeo many times. Okay? So finally, what somebody thought was just an in and out here, I put this in and out comes the money. Now we realize there's, shall we say, some trips to the rodeo in store, no matter what it is. And that trip to the rodeo is also relevant to the process of changing your neural network and your belief systems and managing your behaviors so they're congruent with your dream and your values. So that's important. The other thing is, we have a lot of problems in the change process and the creative process, because just like our culture uses an input-output process, my GPS says the house is here, but holy shit, it's not here. Well, many people also in our culture get so excited about success, money, and fame and accomplishing, they forget that there's a real creative cycle that must be followed if long-term creative success is to be achieved. And that is summarized here. Winter represents the rest period where everything in nature comes to a relative rest. Spring is the planning phase. So spring is right here. Summer's the action phase. This is summer. And fall is the harvesting phase, when we start, taking the fruit down off the tree and making pies out of them, etc., etc. Our culture just goes from plan to action to harvest to plan to action to harvest. So they never rest. If you don't rest, you don't clear your mind. You do not restore your creative juices. If you're working all the time, you're anti-meditating, and acts of creation are largely acts of intuition, and intuition is a process that requires that the ego mind essentially get in the back seat and let go of the steering wheel and wait for the beauty of intuition, the beauty of emptiness, to emerge as fullness. Okay? So, big thing here. This is why Arnold Patent says, first make peace with where you are now, or you will not have the energy to go through the cycle effectively. And having worked with lots of millionaires and billionaires and executives, I can tell you, many people might do good once in a while, but the grand scheme of things is that though they make money, their life begins to fall apart. So they got fancy cars and houses, but their relationships are often suffering the same effects, because no rest means no relationships of any significance outside of what was happening here at work or whatever you were focusing on, and that's a typical problem. Okay? So next in our process, we need to have values. I talked about your 4 doctor values in the first section. And remember, your values are what you use to determine when you're going to say yes and when you're going to say no. If you don't have a set of values, you do not have an effective GPS coordinates. And your values have to address movement of body, emotion, and mind. Dr. Movement. Rest. Physical rest, emotional and mental rest. Happiness. As Arnold Patent says, before you can live life in ideal terms, you must conceive of it that way. So your definition of what happiness is to you should be reflected in your values. Diet. What sort of diet do you need to optimize your life force and your creative energy to get you through the rodeo that's inevitable? Okay? So your values determine when you say yes and when you say no, and if you don't have values, you only know that you've made the wrong choice when you're in pain, which leads to number 5. We have to have countering techniques of recognizing when we are maybe going in the wrong direction and need to counter with a different action. The pain teacher is a technology or a concept I developed some time ago to coach my patients, and even to remind myself when I'm in pain. The pain teacher is usually the one that delivers the impetus to counter, to turn around, to look around, to do something different. So whenever we're encountering pain in our change process, it's usually an indicator that we are not acting in accordance with our stated dream goals, values, or our ABCs are not in line, or we're acting out the thoughts, words, and deeds of the person we were, which are antagonists to the person we've chosen to be right now. And right now is the process. Every minute you're in the concept. If you're even contemplating it, you're already in the process. Okay? So the pain teacher is your invitation to recognize the self-defeating thoughts, immediately recognize the self-defeating thought, affirm your dream out loud, and then restate the negative thought in a way that is congruent with your dream and your values. So the thought, oh, I'll never have enough money to get this project off the ground, is received and handled this way. Thank you, dear pain teacher, for showing me where I'm incongruent with my plan. I will have the money, and I do have the support to make this project work beautifully, and I am grateful for your showing me where I can harmonize my thinking more effectively to our dream. The pain teacher is part of you. Okay? Every time the pain teacher speaks and you reaffirm in positive affirmation, you are now moving you're congruent with your dream. You're moving with your dream. And remember, we don't want to go into a bunch of self-dialogue and beating yourself up. Why do I keep thinking that way? Oh, damn it. That's the same thing as getting mad at yourself because you can't stop your mind and you're trying to meditate, which means you're not meditating. The more you wrestle with an old program, the more you enliven it and reinforce it. So you acknowledge the faulty program, acknowledge the grace of the pain teacher, and you immediately de-energize it by energizing the neural net and the neural pathways that you're developing to support you so they become more efficient than what you used to do. And you will see over time, with commitment and practice, not only you develop better habits and make changes more effectively, but you have more confidence in yourself. Your self-esteem grows because you realize you know how to get through a change process. Process and outcome rewards, or awards. It's a good idea to identify what sort of support can you give yourself when you're going through the dredges of the rodeo and of development and testing and refinement. Each one of us has some sense of what feels good to us. Now, my advice would be, instead of eating a box of donuts right here, you go right up here and give yourself a day at least once in a while to completely forget about it all. Go lay in a swimming pool and read your favorite book, watch a movie, do something, go dancing, go out and party with some friends, have a nice night, have a nice day or a nice weekend or whatever you need. But we each must take responsibility for identifying what support we need in the process and what is a realistically achievable reward for each given outcome. I talk a lot about this in PPS Success Mastery Lesson 3 on goal setting. And all of this falls into the category of PPS Success Mastery Lesson 2, which is called self-management, which are available at ppssuccess.com. Okay, environmental control, persons, places, or things. Now, depending on what your change process is, what you're trying to change, typically there's going to be some influence from the environment via places, persons, or things. If you're addicted to alcohol, that's a thing. If you're addicted to a relationship that maybe isn't good for you, that's a person. And if you're addicted to maybe coffee or something like that, you've always got to consider the environmental relationship or the place. Some of you probably have had the experience of the influence of place in your psyche. I like being here because I love this place. There's an example. Sometimes we're in love with things that aren't congruent with our change. So what do we need to do to manage the persons, the places, and things as it relates to accomplishing our objectives? We often need to get things out of cupboards, for example, that aren't congruent with our dream. So if you're trying to get off of processed sugar, don't leave it around to tempt you. That's really not a wise way to do it. Get rid of anything that is not part of the change process, and this is where relationships with people or persons become important, because sometimes your desire is going to be to remove things out of the house, for example, or the environment that other people don't want removed. So when you have conflict here, your place can get to be quite a buzz. So this is where we have to be real conscious of what a dream team is and how to use one. So that leads us to helping relationships. Who's on your dream team? Remember, the people that are on your dream team are not just the people that are helping you make the widgets. Your wife or your spouse is on your dream team. Your kids are on your dream team. Whoever's life is being affected by the choices you're making are potentially important Dream Team members. So you can have Dream Team members that are direct support, and then you can have ancillary support. So you might say that the people that you work with at work are direct support, but your wife and kids maybe are secondary support. Depends on what mindset you have. You could say your wife and kids are primary support and the people at work are secondary support. The reality of it is, we must identify who is on our dream team and who's going to be affected by our choices, because if somebody's not considered and our choices affect them negatively, it can come back here and make our process much more challenging. This is hard to go through alone, but going through this with an angry spouse or disappointed children can break a person, can break the change process, can ruin the creative potential of the inventor, etc. So what are the mutual benefits? One of the things that it's very helpful to do is, once you know who's on your dream team, try to identify ways that if the project or the change process is completed, there's something mutually beneficial to them. Even if you're going to be a happier, healthier person, that's usually mutually beneficial to everyone you're in relationships with. So look for the mutual benefit, or there's really no motive for the people on your dream team to do what it takes to participate on a dream team. Fine. Next is surround the dragon. Many people hum and haw and make excuses about why they haven't been able to do this or do that, or I don't have the money, I don't have the time. I mean, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, I've heard every excuse you can think of. I have thousands of students all over the world that give them to me every time they have a test due or something. And trust me, I've heard some ridiculous excuses from seemingly intelligent people. I'm telling you, excuses don't get you anywhere except looking in the mirror going, here I am 30, nothing's happening. Oh, here I am 40, and I'm still a bump on a log. Here I am 50, and now nobody loves me because I'm fat and wrinkly and addicted to everything, including telling people why I can't get anything done. Not a good game to play. Surrounding the dragon means look at all the things that need to be done. So we go back here. What planning needs to be done? What testing needs to be done? Who needs to be involved? What's our sales and marketing team got to do? What kind of projections do we have to make? What kind of models do we need to market and sell this product, etc., etc.? So when you surround the dragon, you put yourself in the center of a circle and you identify all the things that you can do something on right now, and then you prioritize those things into the most of the least important, and you get going. And what you will find is, as you're moving through the process, lo and behold, by the time you get to the thing that you thought was going to stop you, you've met people or uncovered technologies or found ways to circumvent the problem, which you never would have done just sitting there looking at television, eating cheesies and going, poor me. Okay? And finally, work hard and rest hard. This is one that is my biggest challenge because I have a truckload of creative energy. And it's easy for me to leave work after being tired all week and then want to go home and lift huge, massive stones and create something massive. And then I wake up and I go, God, I'm exhausted. I had fun, but I didn't really rest my body. And now I go to work feeling like I need to recover from my joy. There's all sorts of scenarios here, but my key thing is I have learned the hard way that I am far more productive and far more capable if I am disciplined with rest. Our culture does not value rest much at all. It's a major, major mistake. As someone who is highly intuitive and values his intuition, I have learned that the more balanced I am with working and resting, the more my creative expression is reliable, and the more my creative expressions are tangible. In other words, instead of brain farts, I am able to create legitimate systems, methods, techniques, and ways of helping other people, which does not happen as efficiently if I get trapped in this Western mindset. So those are my tips for you today on the action phase. My next and last video in the series will be on the maintenance phase of change. Hope you have had some things to think about and Sit down and process this. If you need to watch this a few times, take some notes for yourself. Surround the dragon and go kick some ass. I'll talk to you next time.